Well, joining us now to discuss President Obama's debt reduction plan is Time magazine's Washington bureau chief, Michael Duffy. Michael Duffy, thanks for being there.
Good evening.
A plan to increase taxes on the rich so they don't pay less tax than the people who work for them. Who knew that could be so radical? But certainly the Republicans are not happy. The president's changed tack, hasn't he? He's gone from minimising the differences with the Republicans during the debt ceiling debate to really trying to sharpen them.
Yeah, I think the era of the part of his presidency which was about working with the Republicans is over. That part hasn't gone so well in the last year. He's had to fold several times in the face of their united opposition, and he has now pivoted, as you noted, Ali, to a more campaign-style set of proposals which are about defining who he is and who they are as they head into next year's election. And this proposal to cut the deficit over the next decade by nearly $4 trillion is designed to say, you know, we're for fairness in taxes, they're not. We're for protecting entitlements, they're probably not. We're for, you know, sensible long-term management of the economy, they're for ignoring the problem. So that's the way he has tried to reposition himself here this week. September's turning out to be a big month for him in terms of restarting his political campaign.
Well, indeed. I think he mentioned fairness 11 times in his speech the other day. Of course, the Republicans say it's class warfare. They talk about it being a penalty on risk-taking and job creation. Is that how most voters see it?
I think it's hard to know. Americans are funny about money. Something like 20% of them think they're in the top 5%. Another 20% think they're going to be soon. So it's a very confident, upbeat, aspirational country that where a lot of people think they're just on the edge of prosperity. And this is true in good times and bad. The Republicans hope that that's a big group that votes. Obama's betting that it's not big enough. And you can see both sides sort of jockey for position here in a campaign that is already about only one topic, and that is the economy, and which party is best positioned to shepherd it in the next, however many years we're talking about here. I think it's really difficult to know who's getting the better of whom yet.
And indeed, if the president does refuse to compromise, I mean, he's vowed to veto any plan that is only about spending cuts to reduce the deficit. Can he force the Republicans to compromise?
He hasn't. Yesterday he said he would veto any cuts in Medicare, but he didn't say he would veto it if there were no tax increase at all in it, which was an interesting door he left open. That leaves the possibility that they could agree on a package of cuts that didn't actually increase taxes, which is where we've been for the last year. He might take that deal. He didn't say it explicitly, but that was the implication of what he said. So there is room, yes, Ali, for yet another sort of kick at the can, bite at the spending apple. They've taken 2 bites already this year out of spending. They could take a third, although I wouldn't bet the farm on it.
Well, indeed. I mean, the clock is ticking, isn't it? I mean, where does all this leave the actual effort to reduce the deficit? Because as I understand it, come November the 23rd, if there's no agreement, then cuts will kick in automatically, and they're pretty harsh.
Yeah, they are, but they don't actually kick in for until a year later. We're really good at postponing things here. We're expert. We may be the world's best at postponing serious discipline on ourselves, and even those cuts to which you refer, which are supposed to come swinging across like a sword of Damocles around Christmas, don't actually come for a year after, which gives them a lot of time to undo that and come at it another way or actually delay it again. So it sounds like there's a punitive cut coming if nothing gets done, but I don't think so.
But it also potentially, I guess, puts it outside the realm of the presidential election, which, as well as the economy, is pretty much what everything else is about at the moment. If we can shift focus and have a look at the Republican presidential race, it does seem that the Texas Governor Rick Perry is the front runner. Fair call?
There's no question he has come out of nowhere in 30 days and swamped everyone else in that contest. Texas, someone from Texas has been on the Republican ballot 6 out of the last 8 presidential elections in this country. And they've won 5 of those, I think, or maybe 4. So this is an important part of the party. Perry has been running a pretty good, not terribly mistake-prone campaign so far. We interviewed him last week in Time Magazine, and we thought he would dial back some of his harsh rhetoric. He didn't. He notched it up. So he's decided that the way to win the nomination, and this is probably a good strategy, is to hew very close to a hard right line and not let anyone get to the right of him. And I think that may work for quite some time.
You talk about the harsh rhetoric. I mean, he's called Social Security a Ponzi scheme, a failure by any measure. I note that his closest competitor, Mitt Romney, says the rhetoric will backfire. Who is Rick Perry's constituents, if you like?
Well, the Republican Party is far more conservative than it was 4 years ago, much more than it was 8 years ago. He is a classic Tea Party Republican, someone who understood the Tea Party from its beginnings, gave one of its formative speeches. He also has reached out rather dramatically, rather publicly, to religious conservatives, leading prayer groups, meeting with them in tent revival sessions, quoting the book of Joel, which in some people's view is one of the more apocalyptic chapters in the Old Testament. So he has a pretty good hand on two big parts of the Republican coalition, religious conservatives and the Tea Party conservatives. What he doesn't yet have are the people Romney is strongest with, sort of the more business-oriented economic conservatives who think that they can win this rationally. I think Perry is making a more emotional case that Obama needs to be beat, and at the moment he does have the hot hand.
But does he need Romney's supporters, or surely he needs them if he's going to be successful?
He may not to get the nomination. He may be able to get them without them, and it's not entirely clear to me that all those people love Romney either. So I think it's quite possible now, in a way that it wasn't a month or even two, that Rick Perry could actually be a very serious contender for the nomination, despite what many people expected when he got in. So I would not at all rule him out, and I'm not sure he needs those other folks the way I think the Romney people believe he does. So he is absolutely the one to watch. His distance in the polls has actually pulled away. He's now doing better against Obama than Romney is in these poll matchups, which is a formidable new development.
At the same time, though, is there room for any other runners in this Republican race? I mean, as you pointed out, Rick Perry was nowhere at the beginning of August. Where's Michelle Bachmann? Where's Sarah Palin?
Well, Michelle Bachmann has faded rather dramatically with Perry's rise, and everything she's said in the last couple of weeks has not helped her. I don't expect Palin to get in. So I think the field is pretty set. I think it's definitely going to be a two-man race. I don't think anyone else really matters at this point or is likely to get stronger. And the other people who I think garnered some attention, John Huntsman, for example, has also faded. So I think we're looking at a fairly classic race between an economic conservative and a cultural conservative. It's the kind of race Republicans have had generally over the last 50 years. There are two governors. Both of them have been very successful in statewide races. One's been around the track before. The other has the Texas Republican Party. Both are well funded. I think it's the makings of a real race.
Yeah, indeed. Interesting times. Michael Duffy, many thanks for talking to Late Line tonight.
You bet, Ali.